The order was given in a calm, almost soft tone, yet it cut through the air like a sharp knife. "Take it slowly!" The German women froze in place. They exchanged wary glances before looking at the American soldiers standing before them, each holding a bowl of food and a spoon. Silence fell over them. No one moved. No one dared to breathe. They had heard the rumors. They had braced for the worst. And now, as the soldiers stepped closer, offering them food, one unsettling thought spread across their minds like a cold shadow. Why were they feeding us by hand? Stay with me until the end to learn the truth behind this moment, and why the women's fears gave way to something they could never have anticipated. By the war's final weeks, Germany was crumbling under the weight of its own collapse. Food was scarce, and rations were near non-existent. Entire units survived on crumbs of bread and anything they could scrounge. These women, once clerks, radio operators, and anti-aircraft auxiliaries, had been marching for days, sleeping in the ruins of their country, surviving on nothing but willpower. Their bodies were frail, their nerves worn thin, and their trust in anyone, even each other, was nearly gone. They expected nothing but harshness, punishment, and cruelty, but nothing had prepared them for what was about to unfold. The first interaction with the Americans was quiet and unsettling. The women were lined up in silence, their posture stiff with apprehension. The American soldiers approached them with caution, their movements calm, their voices steady and devoid of aggression. There were no shouts, no threats, only simple instructions, given gently. The women couldn't believe it. Kindness from the enemy seemed unimaginable. Their minds, clouded by fear and suspicion, could not process the scene before them. They were marched to a temporary camp, given blankets, and told to rest. But rest was a foreign concept. Their bodies trembled from exhaustion, hunger, and the ever-present fear of what awaited them. Then the smell reached them, the unmistakable aroma of warm food, something they hadn't tasted in months. Some had gone days without eating a single meal, let alone one that was warm and filling. It was a smell that both comforted and terrified them. They were starving, yet the food they didn't trust now seemed more dangerous than hunger itself. The soldiers brought bowls of stew, slices of bread, and hot drinks. The women hesitated, unsure whether to reach for the food or pull away. Whispers spread like wildfire. "It's a trap." Some feared they would be punished for eating too eagerly, others feared something far darker, that the food might be poisoned, a final, cruel act of revenge. Their hands shook, not just from weakness, but from the paralyzing fear that gripped them. The soldiers noticed the hesitation, exchanged silent glances, and then made a decision the women could not understand. They knelt down, lifted the spoons, and gently spoke the words that froze them in place. "Take it slowly." The moment felt like an eternity. The soldiers' hands extended toward them, offering the food directly, slowly, carefully. The women flinched, some turning their heads away. They didn't understand why this was happening. They didn't know if the soldiers were showing kindness or playing some cruel game. Every rumor, every propaganda message they had ever heard ran through their minds, feeding their suspicions. Why were they feeding us like this? Why the insistence on eating slowly? Why were they watching us so closely? The air was thick with tension. But then one woman, driven by hunger, opened her mouth just enough for the spoon to touch her lips. She swallowed. Nothing happened. Another followed, then another. The soldiers continued to repeat their soft words. "Gently, slowly, take it slow." The women's eyes scanned the room, watching for any sign that something was wrong, but nothing happened. Instead, something unexpected occurred. Their breathing steadied, their shoulders relaxed. The trembling in their hands began to subside. The truth revealed itself only later, after the bowls were empty and the women were finally able to rest. The Americans hadn't fed them to humiliate them. They hadn't been trying to poison them. No, they had acted out of concern. The women had been so malnourished that eating too quickly could have caused severe illness, or worse, death. Their bodies needed time to adjust, slowly, spoon by spoon. The soldiers had seen it happen before, understood the risks, and knew that rushing the women would only harm them. The realization came with shock. The women had expected cruelty. They had expected to be treated as enemies. Instead, the very people they had been taught to fear had shown them mercy. The fear that had consumed them at the beginning of the meal gave way to something entirely unexpected: relief, gratitude, and disbelief. The words that once filled them with terror, "Take it slowly," became the moment when they understood they were finally in safe hands. It was an act of compassion, one that they never expected from the people they thought of as their enemies. This is a true story from the final days of World War II, inspired by real accounts of wartime survival and the unlikeliest of acts of mercy. Sometimes compassion comes from the most unexpected places. Do you agree? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more true stories from the past.